So you're thinking about starting a home inspection business. But let's be real for a second. You want to know, can you actually make money doing this? And if so, how much? There's a lot of myths and hype out there. So today I'm going to walk you through some real numbers from your very first year in the field all the way to building a business that can scale or even sell. Some of this data is pretty hard to nail down. Many inspectors keep their numbers really close to the chest. Honestly, many of the inspectors you see out there on the forum boards and chat sites like you to think they're doing a lot better than they actually are. But this information is based on my real experience and over a decade in the industry, building and eventually successfully selling a multi-inspector company and mentoring others who are doing the same. Let's start with what year one can look like. That is assuming you're 2 out of the 10 that actually go out and get licensed and start a business after going through the pre-licensing school. There's a pretty huge failure rate of people who don't actually even get that far. But if you've got the drive and determination, there's a ton of opportunity here. We'll talk about gross numbers. That's before expenses. And that's the number that matters more if you're actually starting a business. If you're going to go and work for another inspection company, then you don't really need to worry about that. So it's common for a new home inspector in their first year as a solo inspector to make between $20,000 and $50,000. Why such a wide range? It depends on some key factors. What market you're in can make a huge difference. In more urban areas, starting out at $500 for an inspection is super reasonable. But in some of your more rural areas, $300, $350, $400 might be more reasonable. So knowing your market matters a lot. Then there's whether you're part-time or full-time. A lot of people will get into this part-time at first. And one of the biggest things is how well you can market yourself. Also, whether you already have referral sources. If you're just starting out, chances are you probably don't have much of that. Even if you have some family members in the real estate industry, they're not going to be able to keep you full and busy all the time. The first year isn't about maxing out your income. It's about laying a good foundation. It's about getting your systems in place and learning how to write solid home inspection reports. Also, understanding the art of handling customer questions and their dad's questions. If you've been around inspections long enough, you'll get that joke. And building relationships with referral partners takes some time. After all, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And honestly, even learning how to not panic. I think everybody remembers their first home inspection. I know I do. But if you get after it and treat year one like a real business and not just a hobby, you can end year one with a solid foundation for a real income in the years to come. Let's talk about years 2 and 3. This is usually where things start to click. Based on other industry experts and my observations, it's safe to say that it takes around 200 inspections for it to really click as far as a process and having confidence in the flow of an inspection. At around 200 inspections under an inspector's belt, it's reasonable to expect that they have a decent level of competency. And with that competency and confidence, the inspector becomes much more referable and their business will start to click a little bit more. At this stage, getting into the $60,000 to $90,000 range, maybe even breaking that $100,000 ceiling is very doable. And then there's always going to be the 80% or worse that don't quite get it and flounder out after a couple of years. But around this stage, you can start to notice and capitalize on some of those repeat referrals coming back. Old clients, family members of clients, and real estate agents, lenders, all that, they'll start to know you a little bit more and start to refer some business to you. And that's where the momentum can really start to pick up. At this point too, if you've been doing things right, your online reviews should start getting you selling some more jobs for you and getting more customers coming through the door. By 2 or 3 years in, you should have some pretty solid sets of tools, and your report writing and on-site inspection time should be a lot more crisp. And hopefully during this time, you're starting to raise your prices a little bit. Not to price gouge people, but to match your confidence and your skill set. One of the best parts of this stage is you start to really get confidence and the job can become a little bit more fun. It's a little more fun when you have some confidence going into a job and you're not terrified. Also at this point, you can get some confidence that you have a good chance that there's more jobs coming in and you're not just scratching away for every single job. And by now, hopefully you're starting to book a few days out, maybe even into the coming week. This stage is also where good inspectors start to add on some ancillary services like sewer scopes, mold testing, radon, infrared, and manufactured home foundation certifications, just to name a few. These add-ons done right can easily bring in another $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year. That is with the right training and equipment. Obviously, you have to know your area and know what your area needs. Maybe it's well inspections, maybe there's septic, maybe it's sewer scopes. Now let's talk about staying solo, because it's totally doable and a lot of inspectors prefer it that way. A solid solo inspector can fairly easily earn $80,000 to $120,000 a year without burning themselves out. That's all depending on your region, pricing, and whatever services you offer, and how many days a week you want to work. Top performers can even reach into the $150,000 to $200,000 range staying solo, but that often means 6 or 7 days a week, long hours, and a solid routine. I actually know one inspector who was nicknamed the $300,000 man because he routinely grossed $300,000, and he did have somebody answering his phones and doing scheduling for him, but he was the only inspector bringing in $300,000 a year. He did eventually decide to hire inspectors that would tend to wear somebody out, and there's a lot of risk in being on your own. If you're sick, nobody does the jobs. If you go on vacation, nobody does the jobs. So the risk of burnout is a lot higher, in my opinion. Big thing to keep in mind, especially if you've always been an employee and you haven't ran a business before, is that gross income is not net income. You've got expenses and they can sure pile up quick. Insurance, marketing, fuel, software, tools, and replacing and upgrading equipment. And you're self-employed, so you get to pay taxes. Retirement, time off, health insurance, dental insurance, that's all on you. So plan wisely. Don't just chase the top line revenue. That's the sexy number, but what really matters is the bottom line. And focus on building something sustainable. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Now, what if you want to go beyond being solo? Let's talk about scaling. When you hire your first inspector, a lot of things change. You take on a lot more responsibility, but your income ceiling also goes up. At this point, your job shifts from just doing inspections to actually running a business and training and leading people. This is where you get to start actually running it like a real business. That means managing people, refining systems, and thinking like a CEO, not just a technician. Now, if you're doing things right, you should start thinking like a CEO and running a business and building out your systems long before you actually bring on employees. But once you bring on employees, that's where you have no choice. It's time to put on your big boy or girl panties and start getting things done. That's the path I took. Over time, I built a multi-inspector company that I was eventually able to sell. That kind of exit isn't super common for a small business owner, but it's very possible if you build it right, especially if you're thinking about it well in advance. At this stage, net income can reach into the $150,000 up into the $300,000 range. And it can even go beyond that. There's really no ceiling, depending on how many inspectors you have, how many inspections you do, and how efficient your systems are. Here's the truth most people don't talk about. Income in this business doesn't just come from doing more inspections. It comes from doing them smarter. There's 5 key things that really determine your income. That's marketing. People aren't going to hire you if they've never heard of you. Great client communication. That's what leads to referrals. Efficient, clear, non-alarmist reporting. We don't want to freak people out for no reason. Strong referral partner relationships. And smart pricing. You probably don't want to be the cheapest person in town, although there is a business model for that. The inspectors that struggle often make 3 common mistakes. One of these 3 common mistakes, that is. That's not making everything into a repeatable process, creating cumbersome reports that destroy their time and are hard to follow, and the biggest one is failing to market consistently. Avoid those traps and you're already well ahead of the game. If you're serious about becoming a home inspector, or if you're in your first few years and want to grow smarter and faster and avoid a lot of headaches, I wrote a book just for you. It's called The Home Inspector Guide, and it's packed with lessons from building, scaling, and selling my own company. The stuff I wish somebody had told me early on. You can grab a copy at the link below. Also, shoot me an email if you've got specific questions or you want to get on our mailing list. I've got lots of tips and tricks to help you grow. And hey, drop a comment in the section down below and let me know what your income goals are. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.